What's up, everybody? Welcome back. It's been a long time coming to the Best Self Blueprint. For those of you who have not tuned in yet or don't know the mission of this podcast, it is to bring on people with the knowledge, insights, and experiences that hopefully will help you move the dial towards becoming the best version of yourself, whatever that means to you. So I just want to start off by apologizing to everyone who does tune in regularly. I put the podcast and the Trev Talks on the back burner. This lovely human being sitting next to me, we were getting ready for a big event that was going down a couple weeks ago now. I'm also getting into training camp for Project Ultra, which if you haven't heard anything about that, go watch the video on it. So there's been a lot going on, and the podcast fell off what I call the podium of priorities. So it is back on there now. Everything is kind of leveling out. It gives me that mental free space to really do it at the level that I want to do it at and with the consistency that I want to do it at. So thank you for staying subscribed and tuning in. If you're not subscribed, just subscribe. Like this video if you believe it adds value or sheds light on something that you needed. Share it with people. If you think it adds value, share it. This is like a free resource, and the goal is to get this in front of as many people as possible. And if you have questions, comments, agreements, disagreements, throw them in the comments section at any point. But let's dive in. So this, again, amazing person sitting next to me, my now business partner, movement master, speaking savant, and round 4 or 5, back on the podcast, Justin Plez. What up?
What up, man? Good to be back.
Good to have you back.
Still got your intro skills.
I mean, so this is take 2. I had technical difficulties because, as anyone who has seen my laptop knows, I need a new laptop. But hopefully this one stays through. So we've got a lot to get into just from all of the projects I'm working on, all of the projects we're working on, all of the projects you're working on, life events, life lessons, all that crazy stuff. But
so what you're saying is going to be a juicy podcast.
It's going to be juicy. So for you, I'm actually really curious because you're a very introspective person. In the last, we'll say like 6 months, what have been 1 or 2 of the biggest, either like one-time like big life lessons or just things that have kind of repetitively popped up to test you in your beautiful experience that we call life?
I would say without question, the lesson that keeps being brought to me is just like, stay flexible and don't get too attached to where you think you're going or where you think other people are going. Because life has a funny way of just throwing you some curveballs. And if you want to enjoy this thing, you got to be willing to pivot and make meaning in those curveballs. So,
dude, yeah, that's actually something I've had to kind of loosen my grip on, especially with the multi-vertical pursuit that is Best Self, BSW, Project Ultra, all that, is not being so tied to how you're going to execute, but just knowing what kind of your mission is. I think that's the one thing that for me is cemented, is kind of my like mantra surrounding my life is live an extraordinary life and help as many people as I can do the same. And I think it, like you said, it's really easy to get so attached to how I want to do that through Best Self, how we want to do that through BSW, how, and like having all of these outlets so like clenched in how, as opposed to being fluid with the pursuit and just going with what feels intuitively right at that point in the journey.
Yeah, and staying open as you go. Because when you get hit with these curveballs, it's easy to close and like get into some funky headspaces and get frustrated or angry. And even though there's power and use in some of those emotions, getting stuck in that only like impedes your progress. And yeah, man, just also like with those curveballs coming in, remembering to come back to just being grateful for where we're at right now. Because even though things aren't always like sunshine and rainbows and aren't always ideal, at the end of the day, like the act of working on yourself is an investment that will always pay off when these times come, because it gives you a whole nother layer of opportunities no matter what comes your way. And the self-confidence and belief that like you can navigate this shit.
Yeah. Well, surrender is such a powerful word that I've had to, every training camp, I get hit a little bit harder in the face with this lesson. And I've
Mm-hmm.
been hit very early in this training camp with it. And Aubrey Marcus, who we both know and fanboy over, he posted something that it's my phone background now, and it's a picture of kind of like Two-Face from the DC universe.
Mm-hmm.
It's this concept of the anti-you,
Mm.
and so it talks about it's kind of like Newton's laws, right? Every force has an equal and opposite reaction, or every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That's the same when it comes to you. So there's this idea that no matter how leveled up you get, how strong you get, wise you get, accomplished, there is this equal and opposite force that is the anti-you, that knows kind of exactly emotionally and mentally how to be your equal in terms of like trying to take it from you
Mm.
and like kind of strip you down. And it was perfect timing. Me hearing that was that day I was on the treadmill. I was telling you I got a little bit in the victim mentality, and the next day it kind of sunk in right as I saw this post, which was about it's not a matter of necessarily trying to fight and overcome that anti-you. It's a matter of dialing in on the objective logical truth that is what needs to be done to accomplish what you want to accomplish,
Mm.
and instead of trying to fight off the emotions and the mental hindrances and things like that, surrendering to the knowing that those are just going to be there and it won't be all sunshine and rainbows. And I think it's so easy to have this precursor thought going in that if you do all the right things, that it will just be all sunshine and rainbows. But no matter how dialed you are, no matter how perfectly you're executing, there's always inevitably going to be the emotional and mental, what I call the like jujitsu match going on in your head and within your emotions and within yourself. And it's like the sweat lodge. Like the more you try to fight against it, you're just creating friction and tension and making it tougher.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you surrender to just accepting the fact that, and almost befriending that anti-you and
Yeah.
not trying to push them up, just saying, hey, you know, come take a seat, sit down, let's chill. You want a cup of coffee? You want like some chicken nuggets? Here you
Mm-hmm.
go. Hang out, have a good time, and just not feeding it, because I feel like when you fight against it, you're feeding it and empowering it
Mm-hmm.
to grow and expand, as opposed to acknowledging its presence and just saying, hey, yeah, cool, I see you, I get you.
When it just wears you down. Like
Mm-hmm.
this constant battle between those two parts of you. Eventually, the one who's in the driver's seat is just going to get tired of trying to keep that person or that part of you back. And in those moments of weakness is when that other part of you is going to grab the steering wheel and like take charge of your life and drive you into a cliff. So yeah, acknowledging it, not like demonizing it too much. It's a very common thing to just like, again, glorify the doing of like people, like just always moving forward and growing, which is why we're here. But inversely, like by doing that, when you get into these spaces where like intuitively it's time to just chill the fuck out and just relax, if that's not allowed in your blueprint of yourself, then you'll repress that until you blow up, and then you'll have to, and then your whole identity starts to fall apart because like that's not who you are, and it just creates a whole messy bunch of yuck versus just intuitively tuning in to when like it's time to just chill a little bit and just coast. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with coasting every once in a while. I've done this in my workouts for like my whole life, where when I was younger, that whole no pain no gain, like the only workouts that count are the ones that really fuck you up and like
Mm-hmm.
make you feel like you can't walk. And what that did was when I would get into spaces where I needed something softer, I wouldn't allow that. And then eventually my body wouldn't allow me to go hard like I wanted to. So I'd leave the gym feeling defeated and feeling like I failed, even though I showed up for myself, just because it wasn't matching what my expectations were of myself. And as I've gotten older and I've learned more about recovery and just my own body, honoring those days where you're like, nah, man, I am just not feeling it. Still showing up to the gym and shifting the mentality from I have to break my body or I have to really like go hard to I'm just gonna move my body and have some fun playing and developing some skills. Allows me to go into the gym, do what I need to do and always leave feeling like successful, feeling like that's what I needed.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me because the my all of my general advice around like training in particular versus training camp Trevor is so polar opposite when it comes to that ideology because of the fact that generally speaking, like what you and what Kat, his now wife, congrats by the way.
Thank you, bud.
Like
Lucky
what you
man.
both talk about, which is that intuitive knowing of like where your body's at, how you're feeling. Do you need to just take a couple days, stretch, foam roll, recover? I think that like for most people listening, you're not going into a training camp and like making this huge push to do some crazy what a lot of my friends consider masochistic things. And in that case, it really is a game of like how well can you get to know yourself in terms of like what will allow you to progress long term, feel good, and enjoy the process. But then when it comes to training camp, that's where it is like if you want to be able to do this thing, there's going to be a lot of days where there's something on the menu that you're just like, fuck, I don't want to do that. And you got to show up and do it. And I think when it comes to that, that's where I kind of break it down to intensity versus consistency. And I almost think about it like the stock market, where you're never going to find a stock that's just like linearly going up, but it's got the dips, it's got the kind of amplitude of like going up and down, but you're looking for ideally that upward trajectory. And I think about it in terms of like when I'm in camp, it's just blowing up. I mean, you've seen and I've seen in the last 6 weeks, my body looks very different right now than it did 6 weeks ago. My energy level is insane. My athleticism is skyrocketing, and it will continue to do so in this pursuit. But it's knowing that once this is done, accepting like I'm not going to be at that point probably ever again, because hopefully I'm smart enough to give up on this ultra endurance crap.
Yeah,
but
I don't believe it.
but like and that's where it comes down to is it's still that intuition of knowing you're like me in particular, like I'm going to want to be able to sustain that like peak performance, but that won't be enjoyable. It's not sustainable. It's a one push effort to accomplish a goal and then have a lot of grace for the recovery on the back end. And I think like for both of those, whether it is you're looking to keep that harmony of progression and sustainability, or you're looking for that intense push and then the graceful lull that will inevitably come afterwards, it's just that level of self-awareness and knowing no matter what path you're taking that you can't just push. And I think that's what's, especially in the self-development space, there are so many people who do have that mindset of, you know, you need to sprint the marathon. And it is a long distance race, but you need to just go all out the whole time. And it's like, if you're going 100% the whole time, you won't actually be able to go 100% long term.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and that's a very, again, like my perspective on how I train is very much tied to my goal, which my goal is just to become the most like balanced and physically capable being I can. But with that being said, balance is the key word, because like I'm training to be able to handle anything life will throw at me. You're training to do the most ridiculous endurance race I've ever heard of in my whole life, you know? And yeah, I think it's an interesting thing too, because I've had to come back to this middle ground to build a better relationship with my physicality and my body, because I don't want to, this is not a matter of fact thing, but in my perspective, it seems like a lot of people who do really extreme physical sports like bodybuilding and stuff like that, a lot of them don't have good relationships with their body, unfortunately. Like some definitely do, and they honor their body and they take care of that body, but a lot of the really extreme things are, it seems like the underlying piece of it is a very dissatisfaction with their physicality. And it like there's a lot of eating disorders associated with these things, and it's just to get more and more out of it, but that more and more seems to be never enough for a lot of individuals, which creates this outward perspective of looking at them and thinking, my God, you are like just absolutely incredible. But most of the time, the natural response from a lot of those is, yeah, it's not enough yet. It's not enough yet.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, again, I was stuck in that when I was very focused on the aesthetics of bodybuilding in my early on in my career. And even though I had obtained a very like well developed physique, I wasn't allowing myself to see it, and I would go to the gym and just punish myself over and over
Mm.
again. Punish myself for like deviating from my nutrition, or punish myself because, again, I would look in the mirror and see like little arms and think, nope, like, you puny little bitch, like, you got to put in some more work. And that was really
Which, side note, if anyone has ever seen this person in real life, objectively speaking, that is not even close to true. But it goes
but
to
that's
show,
the thing,
yeah,
right? Like, and this is by stepping back and really, again, going down the path of more yoga and stuff, and really making peace with myself, and taking, and that motorcycle accident that we've talked about in the past on these podcasts, that really like reminded me that, hey, this body is a fragile thing. Even though I take care of it and I've worked it really hard, and like that, you can lose this whole part of you in a moment just because of an accident. So, I just, that the preciousness that is really taking every moment of your life and trying to send gratitude for the fact that you can actually move and do these things is a huge part of enjoying the ride. Just enjoying the ride.
dude, that's so true. And it's something we've talked about many times with each other, with clients, with friends, with family. There are two places you can come out of: love or fear.
Mm-hmm.
And most people will say, well, it's not necessarily fear, it's hate or whatever. But if you really look at and boil it down, it really does fall into one of those two categories.
Yeah.
And that's so true. And that's something that I have been very, I have a whole list of mantras for this whole training camp. And one of them is, I don't have to, I get to.
Yeah.
And so that's such a powerful reminder, because I think when you're in that mindset of I have to, that's coming out of that fear, and it's coming out of that negative energy space. And your body feels that, and it knows that you're coming from that space. When you really viscerally understand, anytime you're going in the gym, anytime you're eating what you're eating, it's a choice.
Yeah.
And it's you get the opportunity to do whichever you want to do. And so for me, when it does come down to those like harder training days, or 2-a-days, 3-a-days, things like that, it's that quick little reminder and intention setting of, hey, like, what is this even all about? Now, there's the charity end, the community end, all of that, but for the athletic pursuit, what is it all about? It's the knowing that, because I'm very blessed to be in good health, to have the level of fitness that I do, to have kind of the pieces put in place, for me it's all about that childish excitement that comes from, like, what can we actually get out of this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, with the knowledge that I have as a trainer, and with the skill sets that I have as an athlete, and with the mental fortitude I've had from developing this ultra space, like, what is the limit? Like, how far can we go? And although I think that's a dangerous game to keep twisting the dial on, I do think there's something so beautiful about not giving yourself the succumbing to, like, just comfort all the time.
Yeah.
And having that extended pursuit of, like, what is the maximum potential, with staying true to, like, the beauty of, like, coming out of a place of love and doing it. And I think one thing that helps with that, though, is how I've set it up with the charity event, with the community event, and knowing that not only is it a get to and not a have to, but it's also not even really about me. I'm just the shiny object that gets the eyeballs onto something much bigger and more deserving.
Yeah.
And that opens up a whole other conversation. But
Well, and again, like, the beauty that is, here we are. You can do anything you want in this life if you're willing to put in the time and energy and, like, really focus on it. And at this point in your life, you've already done some, like, ridiculous things. And how that transfers over into our, like, best self warrior, like, the overcoming adversity, and, like, the ridiculous, like, events you've already done immerses people into your story. You take that out, and, like, we lose a massive point of our actual, like, speaking ability, because you can't just say the message, you got to be the message. And I'm such a big fan of that idea, because time and time again, there's a lot of people regurgitating information and they understand it intellectually, but they're not applying it emotionally into their life. And even though those words may be the same coming out of two people's mouths, like the one who actually lives it has a much more powerful impact on those people who are hearing it. So,
Dude, so that reminds me of a really cool story I heard. I don't know where I heard it, but it was a story about this mother kept trying to get her daughter to stop eating sugar. She knew it was bad for her, and she was eating, let's just say she was eating a standard 2 Twinkies, 5 bags of Skittles, and 4 Cokes a day. I don't know. And so the mom can't get the daughter to stop, so she brings her to the Dalai Lama or Gandhi or one of those characters and says, "Hey, would you be willing to like talk to my daughter about stopping consuming so much sugar?" He says, "You know what? Come back in a week and I'll talk to her." She's like, "In a week? All right." So she goes back a week later, and whoever this spiritual paragon is, we'll just say Dalai Lama. So the Dalai Lama leans down and he says, "Hey, your mom and I love you. We care about you. And that's why we want to just make sure you realize like how harmful this really is. We would really appreciate if you'd be willing to stop." So the daughter's like, "Absolutely, you're the freaking Dalai Lama. Sure." She walks away and the mom comes up to him and says, why did you tell me to come back in a week?" He said, "Because a week ago I was still eating sugar." So
nice.
he basically had that, exactly what you're talking about. He couldn't just say the message, he had to be the message. And there are so many examples of that, like with Michael Jordan in the Last Dance docuseries talking about he'll never push a teammate to do something that he won't or hasn't done himself. And I just think that's so true, especially in all of the industry we're in, the specific jobs that we have, and kind of the responsibility we've placed on ourselves to do the things we do. That is so true, and people see through it so fast.
Yeah, you can feel it. Just about anybody has these feelings when they talk to somebody, if they are authentic or not. And some people are good at manipulation. Some people can really like get over it, but the vast majority of people, unless they've really practiced manipulating, like the authenticity of what you're saying comes through in those words and your body language and in your actions. And it's huge. And that's why like right now, like watching you push yourself to these crazy extremes, I'm your biggest cheerleader. I'm over in the back like, man, get it, Trev. I'm curious to see how this plays out, because I know you got 8 more months of training fucking crazy hard. So you're going to be entering into a whole new stratosphere of challenge and adversity. But I know you'll get through it and you'll learn some powerful lessons. Like that last I think it was Run Schmore, right?
Run S'more. Yeah.
Schmore. You hit that crazy burnout, didn't you? Where you're like your body
with like
battery.
3 weeks to go.
Yeah. And that's just it. Like there was a beautiful lesson in you structured out this perfect plan. It was perfectly on paper, and you had the discipline and like the heart to push through all of that fatigue until your body said, "Hey,
yeah,
you're done." And then
if you're not gonna stop, we're gonna stop.
And that's it. Like, so that attachment to that plan like led you to that, and then you still ended up doing great. But I think that wisdom that came from that is something that you'll honor a little bit more in this.
Oh yeah.
Because it's again, you have this structure, you have this plan, you know what you're shooting for, push, but intuitively still knowing when it's not, you do need to take a moment and chill out, or you're gonna actually set yourself back like 10 steps, trying to like take that little half step forward. So, and I think like, man, I feel like every time we get into these podcasts, this is where the conversation goes, because this is what we love. But coming back to like Best Self Warrior and this whole endeavor, and stepping into getting on stage and speaking and giving these life-changing workshops, this chapter of our lives is such an exciting one, because we did just finish our biggest workshop yet with the Miss United States of America beauty pageant, and such a beautiful event. So many like really engaged and like inspiring people out in the audience listen to it, and it's exciting to see where this all goes. We have a mantra ourselves since we started this business called, we just look at each other and say, big things coming. And we had to actually shift it a couple times and say big things are here, because
Yeah.
even though there's this big vision of where we can go with this and this impact we can have on the world, every single time we show up and just present our authentic selves and our message, the energy that we take from it is like euphoric. It's such a wild high, especially, and it's very interesting and ironic because at the core of like me, I'm a very introverted person. So, you know, by definition, being an introvert and getting in front of a lot of people should take some energy away. But I think the magic ingredient in it is authenticity and vulnerability, and like being able to just go up there and strip my armor off and my walls down and just be fully authentic and give this idea and this message, knowing it has the impact or has the potential to make this impact that I think it can. And then from that, man, just charging up.
Yeah. Dude, I tend to just be not even like overwhelmed, but so just like hypercharged by the realization that you can truly do whatever the fuck you want in this life. Like, and I don't even swear a lot on here, but that deserves a fuck. So like, dude, it's so true. Like, you would not have been able to tell me 5 years ago that I'd be in the position I am, where we were sitting in front of 50 high caliber women, teaching them about how to level up. Like, you're talking people who are, in their communities, developing and working on awareness and funds for social causes, really dialed in on self-awareness and self-development. And to have the honor of being able to go in as experts and give them more tips, skill sets, mindsets, and just more awareness to level up even further, knowing that those people are then going to go out and spread that message tenfold, is freaking crazy.
Yeah.
To think about, like, all of this stuff with Project Ultra, with the business things we're working on, and just with the people that are around me now as opposed to 5 years ago. It is so true that I would argue the biggest piece of the puzzle when it comes to orchestrating and like building the life that you want is make sure that the people around you match the reality that you're trying to set up. Because I think that part of the thing that kind of held me back was my physical reality being so far misaligned. And when I finally took it upon myself to be the creator of new relationships and going after these things without giving into that whole like anti-you and inner voices and all those things, dude, just what we've been able to do. I mean, like, just going and talking to the groups that we've talked to and developing the message in the way that we have, and all of these experiences that we've been so blessed to have. And I do think part of it is luck, but I have my own little formula of luck that kind of plugs in and makes more sense. But dude, that's the first thing I want to say is, like, if you have a dream, go after it. Like, if you need help, like, contact one of us and we will drill it into you that you are worthy, you are capable. But if it's doubt that's holding you back from doing it, oh man, I cannot urge you strongly enough. Just go after it, or go after something that's kind of a step below it to prove to yourself that you can at least progress towards the accomplishment of that goal. So I'm going to start with that. But I think too, what's so powerful about BSW is we don't put chips in the basket of like puffing our chest and being like, oh, we're the best and that's why we're coming to talk to you. It's so much more, this message is so powerful and we're so grateful that we have the opportunity to share it with people, that I think that is the secret sauce to the success of these workshops, where we're getting raving reviews, not because we're going in saying, oh yeah, look at us, we did these things and have these accomplishments. It's, look at this message, look at how universally true and empowering it is, and then really putting the force, that energy behind the message in a way that does really amp them up and give them the tactical tools to implement, and not just like ooh rah rah, but like, no, let's show you how to take action on it.
Yeah, yeah, and that is without question the power that is Best Self Warrior. Is there is these fundamental rules that we've learned through our own reading and like through looking for those answers, but then there's also thousands of hours in actually applying that to coaching and seeing so many different types of people at different chapters in their life and seeing what is the fundamental patterns that are playing out and keeping people stuck, and what are the correlations between those people who actually break through and achieve their goals. And I'm 33 right now. I'm going to be 34 in a month, and it's been over a decade of working with individuals from a deep place of passion and like compassion, just really trying to help people break through, and stumbling through it so hard in the early stages of my coaching because I was just giving them strategies. I was just giving them, hey, if you want to get in shape, you got to do this for your workout and you got to eat this. And that did help some people get some pretty good results, but time and time again, I have to come back to the fact that most of those early clients didn't keep the results. And it was deeper than that. I had to really keep going down the rabbit hole of behavior change and like shadow work and psychology and just trying to understand, why do people keep doing these things that they know aren't good for them. And it comes down to emotions, and it comes down to a lot of different things, but in particular like some of these deep rooted repressions and emotions and the shadow work that we're talking on.
Yeah.
And just bringing awareness to that is the first step. If you don't have an awareness of it, all you do is just use these decisions to beat yourself up. Like these deviations from your goal are just more fuel to beat yourself down, and then perpetuates this whole idea. But once you have awareness that, hey, this isn't because you're not capable, it's not because you're stupid, and it's not because you're lazy. It's just you got some stuff in you you don't know, like you're not aware of right now, that you have to address before you're going to be able to move on to that next chapter of your life. Yeah. And being able to articulate that and those ideas into a message, and then give that to a big group of people who are looking for answers. Yeah, man, it's a blessing to be at this chapter in our life, and it's exciting to see where everything goes with it. So.
Well, we've got big plans, but we'll keep those between us for a while. But no, there's something that I want to bring up. You actually posted, I will paraphrase because I don't remember the exact quote, but you said, when your external achievements or accomplishments outweigh like the self-belief and or the inner work that you've done, you'll self-sabotage, or you'll like something along those lines. This, I think, is a perfect time to touch on that, because it's so true, and I've done it and I've seen it, and I don't know if you've experienced that within yourself, but absolutely. I know you've had clients. So just kind of touching on what that actually looks like, because it is so true. And I think imposter syndrome can be a good indicator that that's about to happen if you don't have the correct lens shift and start taking action on doing the right things.
Yeah, and you paraphrased it pretty well. And I'm going to probably paraphrase it because I don't remember the word for word. But it really came down to that when your success exceeds your own internal sense of self-worth, you will self-destruct, basically. You will start to do very self-destructive actions to bring yourself back into a reality that's aligned with your view of what you deserve. And this happens in every element of people's life, whether it's their physicality, whether it's their relationships, their career, their finances. Time and time again, this is one of those things that actually plays out universally in humans. And that's why, in my perspective at this stage in my life, the greatest thing you can do is not just not purely just go out and try to accomplish these things, but while you're accomplishing these things, taking the time to really build yourself up. It's all connected. It's hard to say, it's all part of it, because in order to feel better and feel more confident about who you are, you have to take action towards these things you want. But purely taking action towards those things you want doesn't guarantee that you're going to build some confidence if you're not doing that deeper work. And at the end of the day, surrounding yourself with people who support you is a massive, massive, massive piece of that. Taking care of yourself physically is a massive, massive piece of that, because if you aren't taking care of yourself physically and eating decent food and moving your body, that too is a reflection of your own view of yourself oftentimes. And that not only like reinforces that idea, that deep rooted idea that you're not good enough, it also makes you feel like garbage. With then it's hard to feel good about yourself when you don't feel good physically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so taking care of your physicality, making sure you surround yourself with the right people, and then continuing to like, I really do at this point in time believe that a massive part of why we're here is to understand yourself and accept yourself at a deeper level. And there's different modalities to accomplish that mission. For a lot of people, therapy is fantastic. For some people, that's not a necessary piece of that path. They can find that through spirituality. They can find
Mm-hmm.
that through just doing their own due diligence and reading different resources. But there is an element of going deeper and understanding yourself so that you can work with that instead of working against it. Because that just gets exhausting. When you can just dance with your own shadow, like life gets really fun and easy. But if you're constantly like on guard trying to fight this thing off, like it's going to win eventually because it's got way more endurance than you're gonna have.
Yeah. Well, it kind of still again goes back to that whole anti-you idea that is, if you're working that hard and you start kind of getting like mentally and emotionally tired, this flip side of the coin is just waiting,
Yeah.
because it doesn't really have to do much. You're running on the treadmill, tiring yourself out, going nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
and then as soon as you got to take a break, bam, it just
Bam.
lands that one clean shot that shatters everything.
Mm-hmm.
I do think another part of it though is just simply presence in the process.
Yeah.
And I think part of what really trips people up in terms of their ego just getting like shocked is we go on autopilot for a vast majority of our day, week, month, year, and unfortunately life. And in doing that, when you're in the pursuit of something, it's so easy to check out and just focus on the destination, the finish line, whatever. But then when you get there, because you were on autopilot, you didn't have the awareness at the incremental, minimal progressions that could have allowed you to adapt and like reset and restabilize
Mm-hmm.
on the way. And so when all of a sudden you look back up and you're in this completely different spot as a completely different person, your ego is going to freak out and do whatever it can to get a hold on something that is comfortable and familiar. And
Mm-hmm.
that oftentimes, like you're talking about, comes in the form of self-sabotage, self-destruction, whatever that may be. I know for me it comes up in a variety of ways, but what's really helped is when I am at my most present in the pursuit during the process, I'm able to identify when I start feeling off and
Mm-hmm.
when my ego is starting to flare up and trying to kind of like grab me by the ankle and pull me back. And I'm able to kind of take a second and like really just pause and be present and sit in the stillness of like, okay, where am I? Who am I right now? Let's look at like just today or in the last week, like what have been the progressions. And it allows you to kind of stitch like one little piece at a time
Mm-hmm.
and just get reset and get familiar with it, so that again you don't blow it all up because your ego is freaking out.
Well, and that's beautiful. And if you can take the time to really like question this identity that you've created for yourself and start to dissect it and strategically like reconstruct it, because like it doesn't, the more attached you are to some of these very temporary parts of your life, the more fragile your ego is. Like
Mm-hmm.
taking more of this generic approach of I am a grower, like I grow and I excel and I thrive in like discomfort. Like when I get broken down, I may fall, but I'll get back up because I'm a warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Like that doesn't mean like I don't break down. I acknowledge there will come times where I'm going to fall and I'm going to be in pain, but I know I'll get back up. Like that part is a very resilient part of my identity. And I think that having reconstructed that and not purely identifying as I'm a coach, I'm a coach that
Mm-hmm.
gets people to their goals. Like that was very much a part of my identity. But then when somebody didn't get their goals, I would take it very personal, and that left me in a very funny space, like egoically. If I have this idea that I need to get like because I'm a great coach and I get people to their goals, if a client isn't getting to their goals, I'm a failure.
Mm.
You know, so that was part of me early on because I was so passionate about helping people. But then I had to reconstruct that and say I'm a very passionate coach, and I'm gonna make sure I continue to stay open for my clients and help them find their way. And if they're willing to stay the process, they'll get to their goals. But I have to allow for their own humanity and their own journey and their own like trials and tribulations. And I can't come in and save them all the time, because it's just too draining. It's too draining. Um, so, so that's a big piece of it too. Like you have a very resilient identity. Like that resilience is a key point. You're very addicted to growth, like I am.
Hmm.
And I think the most successful people I've ever met, those are two parts of their identity. It just is, again, like if people don't actually like reflect on what their identity is and what the story is they're telling themselves, then they're blind to it, and that leaves them very vulnerable when life shifts on them, because it does. It just, things change.
Yeah.
Relationships fall apart if you don't water them, and sometimes even if you do, they fall apart. And like your workplace, your identity at work can shift in a moment because a company's downsizing or needs to do something that's in the best interest of the company and not the best interest to you. And if you're too attached to this idea of who you are, you just go into resistance mode and you just fight it all along the way. And if you don't choose to leave that situation, then you're miserable while you're in it. So it's that type of stuff that I think sets people up to actually obtain their goals and enjoy the process.
Yeah. And the word that kind of pops up in my mind when it comes to that is adaptability.
Yeah.
Like how able are you to adapt when, whether it be an internal or an external circumstance, completely shifts or even like disappears or gets kind of like it appears out of nowhere, disappears out of nowhere, changes drastically. How able are you to adapt without trying to hold on and like grasp at what is it, grasp at straws?
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's so important, and because of that, I think it's so important to practice adaptability
Yeah.
by switching up your routine, by switching up the things you're reading or listening to or observing, or like just not. I think routine is very powerful. I think there are a lot of things that I practice in my own life routinely that might shake me up a little bit if I didn't. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of things that I intentionally switch up consistently so that I can keep that adaptability muscle working.
Yeah, and that's a habit. Like you can, in my world and in my life, what has worked for me is strategically inserting variability into my consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Like whenever I've gotten overly structured and too attached to a plan, my brain just rebels against it. So it's again honoring that part of me and not putting myself too much in a box, and strategically putting enough structure to keep me growing and moving towards my goals, but also enough to avoid that shadow taking the wheel because he's sick and tired of doing this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And embracing uncertainty is something that I think everybody has varying degrees in. Some people are born in this world with and more open to that type of piece of this world. Some personality types really like hate change and hate uncertainty, but that exact thing is what leaves them vulnerable to really be broken.
Mm-hmm.
Broken by just life.
Well, and just having regret, right? Like, as we know, part of the Live Unlimited workshop that we've been doing, we dive into the most common human regrets, and one of them is not taking bold action. Well, to me, a big part of bold action is spontaneity and like being, and sometimes it's not, but I think like for a lot of people, like when they take that spontaneous trip or they go do something crazy or like way out of their comfort zone, I think that is really where a lot of big memories are made.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have this identity attached to not liking change and not liking surprises and things like that, you completely strip yourself of the ability to enjoy the bold action that inevitably will show up as regret towards the end of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a quote that comes to mind. I don't know who said it, but basically, nobody has ever shrunk into their like dream of their or life of their dream. Like the only way to get to that place that you really envision is to expand And the only way to expand is to get uncomfortable and to do the things that historically you haven't done. So like that's another fundamental rule of change and like really obtaining your goals is it's going to be uncomfortable. There's no way around it. There's so much fear around that space. But you have to constantly, as you go through this life, if you want to live your best life, you have to push on your own boundaries. You have to come up to the edge of that cliff, look over it, and just get a little closer. And you might fall every once in a while, but most of the time it's not going to kill you. And yeah, even somebody in my family in particular that I love very much, like they were very their upbringing was very sheltered and it kept them in a space of fear. And at the core of them, they really wanted to have this very like wild exciting life, but fear always got in the way. And it's just little steps like just choosing to go on a solo trip somewhere that's not super dangerous, but definitely is well outside your comfort zone. And time again, the universal experience is whenever you're willing to do that thing that scares the shit out of you, if you actually do it, most of the time it ends up being one hell of a story and you come back expanded. You come back with a whole new threshold of discomfort because you know you can do that thing, so what else can you do? And until you're willing to step up into that and do that, you're stuck. And if you avoid it long enough, it's not even that you're stuck, you actually shrink and you get smaller and smaller until life's not even worth living anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I really don't believe that your comfort zone ever stagnates. I think it is either expanding or shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at what pace is determined by, what you're doing, but I really don't believe that it ever stays the same. I think if you don't feel like it's expanding, it probably is slowly closing in. Um, I'm curious for you right now because I know you're getting into kind of like the strength training and like building that. What, and maybe that's it, but what for you right now is kind of your growth zone, or like what are you looking to grow by doing,
Mm.
and what are some things that either are kind of like coming up on the horizon or that you're like currently doing to have that either bold action or that adaptability? Like what are some things that you're doing now or have planned to
Mm.
kind of step into that space?
There's multiple layers to it. Like I take this deep health perspective that I got from precision nutrition, that cert I went through, and from a physical standpoint, I've spent the last 5 6 years obsessing on fixing my body that I kind of busted up through some of the younger years of me training for like bodybuilding and strength, and I've gotten it there now. I can, from a movement standpoint, there's very few things that aren't unlocked. I don't have any pain. I don't have any limitation. I understand alignment, and I built a good foundation now. So now starting to actually test the realm of strength, just because it is fun. At the end of the day, like everybody, men or women, like moving weight. Like it is something that's very empowering about that. And now that I've put into work to fix my foundation, I'm getting more into like strongman stuff. We just ordered a actual plate loadable log. We just ordered some really heavy duty farmer carry things. I got all the heavy maces. So from a physical standpoint, it's time to really step into more of a strength standpoint for me. Chapter one was aesthetics when I was young because I was very insecure. Chapter two was mobility and function because I had experience being broken and I wanted to be bulletproof. And now chapter three is just again stepping into this realm of I love this physical body I'm in. I honor it. Now let's just see what I can get out of it while still honoring it. No place of insecurity, no place like it's already enough. But let's see what happens if I apply all the knowledge I have and like actually put this foundation to the test and see what I can do. So that's it physically. Emotionally, it's just continuing to like do the work to stay open and become more and more aware of my own triggers and to start to transcend them every day. And like that has allowed me to go deeper with Kat, like by far the healthiest and most like fulfilling relationship I've ever had. And we're constantly we've been in this very blessed space for a long time, but just through that intention of really being more aware of like just these natural patterns in people, these patterns of being triggered and closing, and just making the overall objective of keeping my heart open and helping her keep hers open. Just that, just trying to go deeper and to get to a place where like it's so overall just a constant state of openness and like just deepening the intimacy and all that. So from a relational standpoint, there's that. Um, and then from a financial standpoint, it's continuing to get to new levels of financial freedom through things that actually fulfill me. Like I've learned enough throughout my career that like money isn't everything, and like how you obtain that money is more important than how much you obtain. And I'm so attached to fulfillment, to like like really enjoying the process, that I want to continue to master my craft and like to refine my message and my ideas to the masses, because I know the impact that I'll have on the masses will directly correlate with the financial like improvements in my own life. But it's not chasing the money, it's chasing the impact and knowing just through observation that impact leads to more money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that to me is one of the coolest things about what we do is I think both of us have found a way to make sure that in order to make more money and to have more financial stability, we need to level up ourselves. Because the more aware, the more knowledgeable, the more skillful, the more intuitive, the more like just the more elevated we become, our ability to execute on helping other people do the same goes up, therefore our compensation goes up. And that to me is just one of the greatest things about, like you said, like how, and I know there are plenty of people who disagree, and you work to live, not live to work. But in my mind, how I'm making that money brings with it a certain energy. And so if by making more money it all comes down to how authentic am I being, how present am I being, how much am I leveraging the best parts of my energy, my skills, my mindset, my all of that stuff. I think that's one of the most beautiful things in the world, is knowing that I don't benefit until I make sure other people are benefiting.
Yeah, yeah, and you don't. That's just I've ran into this issue in the past of when I being overly attached in my own mind that the only way to make a living is to do what you love, or you didn't like. This was part of my blueprint. Like if I don't like my job, then I'm failing. That was something I really had in my mind, and that really fueled me to look for other things. But that's not a truth. Like you don't have to absolutely love what you do to live a solid life. Like you can't hate it. Like if you hate what you do, then it's up to you to step into that fear and either change your perspective or change your situation. But you don't need to be absolutely in love with the thing you're doing to make a living, to still live a very fulfilling life.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But with that being said, again, like at the end of the day, whatever you're doing, having a couple pieces of that thing that you're doing aligned with what you really value is very, very important to being fulfilled and to being able to do like high quality work, because it feels good to be good at what you do. And the only way you're going to be really good at what you do is if you actually enjoy the what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, the way I see it, there are tiers to it, right? I do fully back what you're saying, that you do not have to be doing a passion project for your career in order to have overall a fulfilling life that you love and truly believe that you are blessed and grateful and abundant. But to me, the real like ideal that comes with living a life of truly unlimited abundance, gratitude, fulfillment, I think it does come from being able to integrate something you love or are at least passionate about, that allows you to make the money you need to make to live the ideal lifestyle you want to live, doing something that allows you to progress both at the job and as a human being.
Yeah.
And it comes down to that, I think it's called like ikigai, where it puts together those four circles, and then so it's the layers of the four circles, and then they like kind of integrate two at a time like a Venn diagram. But then in the middle is ikigai, where it's like your skill set, your passion, your like how much money you can acquire, and I don't remember
It's
but
again, it's what are you good at? What do you love to do? What does the world need? And what can you be paid for? Those are the four pieces. And like I did this recently with my sister just to identify direction. And this whole concept is such a great concept to lean into, because even if you're feeling lost, just doing this exercise will at least give you some direction to start working on, just some hints. You don't need to have it all figured out. Like even with the work I've done, I acknowledge like I don't have it all figured out. I know what I love and I know who I am at the core, and with that I can move in a direction. But I don't know where that direction is going to lead me precisely, and I'm not attached to it having to be anything.
I think anyone who says they have it all figured out
Oh man,
has
life's about to smack them up.
a good dose of delusion. And now, don't get me wrong, I am the type of person who my ability to visualize my desired outcome is at a very high level, and I think that has allowed me to manifest a lot of things at a pretty significant pace, given the fact that I'm at where I'm at the age I'm at. But it goes back to that very beginning statement where like if you're too attached to a plan, you're going to get let down. It'll probably take a hit on your self-confidence. And so I think when it comes to it, it's understanding for you right now what is the best use of your time, energy, focus, resources, and then just knowing, like you said, like what's the direction, like where are we headed, and then knowing like, okay, it's the direction, it's the speed at which we're heading, and that ability to pivot when needed. Not if needed, but when needed.
and again, like you can have fun and be excited and feel like you're growing once you have that clarity of what you actually enjoy. Even if you have no idea how you're going to get to a space of like potentially like providing yourself with income. If you know you're very passionate about cooking, go take some cooking classes. If you really like art, go to a convention, like try to meet some artists or go to like some workshop. And it's the same thing. Like I'm very passionate about spreading this message. So I was very intentional about trying to create workshops with you early on just to get some reps in. And like listening obsessively to different speakers and taking notes on what did I like.
Yep.
And like so those are things that like once you have that at least that level of awareness, you can start to accumulate the skills that will eventually lead you to being better at that thing, which then can potentially lead you to making a significant income off of it.
Yeah.
And just being fulfilled by being good at this thing that you love. Like that's the greatest thing in the world. You love this thing and you're good at it. You can lose yourself in that.
Oh yeah.
And oftentimes like it gets clouded by now you have to do it for money. Like, and this is really what fucks a lot of people up is once they actually bring that element into their life and that becomes like one of the major parts of it, the passion starts to die down. So,
well, and I that's something I actually was going to touch on earlier, but now it's the perfect time. Is like the flip side of everything that we're talking about is it's absolutely okay not to try to monetize everything. So I think like in the entrepreneurial space in particular, there is this. I don't even want to call it a fad, but there's this newer concept of like what we're talking about. Find something you like to do, monetize it. But I think if it's something like you said, like art or playing sports or doing like things like that, it's okay to just have hobbies. It's encouraged, at least from me, and I'm sure from you.
It's necessary.
It is, and so that's something like I love movies. I have no desire to go out and be a producer of a film that, like, I love playing sports. I have no desire to try to like make it to the NFL when I can just go throw some snow pants on and play snow football with my friends. Things like that, like Justin's talking about, it's having that distinction of what do I want to apply the pressure on myself to ensure that I get good enough at and stay consistent enough with that I can make money doing the thing? And then what are some things that I just like to do for fun every once in a while and let loose and enjoy it and be present with it? And like just a couple days ago, we went rock climbing. It's never going to be something that I'm going to try to get like sponsored to go climbing or do anything like that. But it's such a fun thing to do with like-minded people who like getting active. And so a little bit of a rant on that, but all of that to say, I think this all boils down to awareness. Being aware of those elements of what the world needs, what you're good at, what you like, what can bring in income, and then knowing with increased awareness as you get into each of those categories, what does feel intuitively right to start blending together, and what for the purity of the act of just doing the thing should stay in its own category.
Well said.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, so we'll start to wrap this up a little bit, but kind of just getting into the last few things. One thing I'm curious about is, what are some things through coaching, through just living, through doing these workshops, what are some common things that you're seeing happening in the world that you have a message for? Like, let's say I gave you this blue snowball is connected to every speaker in the world right now. What's a message that you would tell the world just based on things that you see as a coach, as a human, as a conscious being?
Everybody's just trying to figure out their shit. Everybody's doing the best they can for the life that they lived and the traumas they went through. And as a result, a lot of people are stumbling through life very lost and in a lot of pain. And it's making them do things and lash out unconsciously at other people. And it's creating this big separation. And at the end of the day, like, just acknowledging that, hey man, we're all just souls that just showed up to this space. And I really take a strong perspective, because it gives me a foundation of love, that nobody at their core is a bad human being. There's people that do very bad things, but behind those actions is often a lot of pain and like a lot of damage that was done to them, and they just aren't aware enough to actually do better yet. So I think that's the biggest message, is just like soften yourself up and be open to the fact that like these people that are doing things that you disagree with, or even these people that you hate, behind that judgment is just another human being who's just like you, making mistakes and trying to figure it out. And if you can open yourself up to that, and you can stop judging so harshly and putting these walls up, the quality of life that you'll live will be so above and beyond what you have lived, that it's worth everything. And that's how you change the world.
Heck yeah. All right. We will wrap it up there, just because it is Thanksgiving as we're recording this, and I got food to put in my face hole. So thank you, everybody, especially if you've made it to this point, for tuning in. I will always have gratitude for anyone who takes the time out and invests in themselves. Any person I have on here, anything that we talk about, either it's because we've got off course, or it has something to do with self-development, or some way to make you, your life, your community, your world better. So appreciate you tuning in. Couple last things, just again, for the few of you who watch this all the way through. If you are part of a business, a group, a team, anything like that, that could benefit from someone coming in, doing a workshop on goal setting, team building, how to optimize a system, what's up? Yeah, bring us in. You can comment. You can send me a message. My contact info is going to be in the show notes below. But our goal is just to level people up in whatever way, however we can. That's our goal. I still have some coaching spots left. Justin also has some coaching spots available. So if you've ever wanted to work with either of us, again, reach out, let us know. We're more than happy to work with you and run you through what we have to offer. But that's about it. So thank you one last time. Much appreciated. Go do something crazy. Happy Thanksgiving.
Enjoy it,
Enjoy it.
and we'll see you soon.
We'll catch you next time. Peace.